Well, good evening, everyone. Glad evening. I have to get used to it. I will get it. Yeah, as you say, I think it's a good way to start our evening together by refreshing our commitment to the 5 trainings, the 5 precepts. Actually, you have a choice, either 5 precepts or 8 or 227. Anyone? 227? Just me? Okay. Well, then we stick with the 5 precepts, okay? So first off, let us pay homage to the Buddha. Please repeat after me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 3 times. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tutiyampi dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tutiyampi sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. The undertaking of the 3 refuges is complete. Tisarana-gamanang nittidang. Bhante. Next we undertake the 5 trainings, the 5 precepts. Please repeat after me. Pāṇātiپātā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Adinnādāna Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Kāmesu micchāchārā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Musāvādā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Surameraya Maccappamādatthāna Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Appamadena sambhadeta. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well, I'm very happy to be here this evening and have this very special opportunity to meet this evening together with all of you, and I was invited to share a few words on the significance and value of Kalyanamitras, spiritual friendship, and also its effect on developing a spiritual community, and how that might also impact our own Dhamma practice. And this is a topic that is very dear to my own heart, being based up in Taiping with a community of monastics, and where we try to be Kalyanamitras towards each other, and harmony, building a community that is based on harmony, openness, mindfulness, and all these beautiful Dhamma principles. And I would like today to base my analysis or my reflection on this Fourfold Principle that we find in the suttas, a core teaching of the Buddha, which are the Four Noble Truths. But we are not going through the Four Noble Truths as we have heard them many times, but we use the Four Noble Truths framework. What do I mean with framework? With framework, I mean, you see, the first Noble Truth speaks about an issue, about a problem, dukkha, suffering. What is the second Noble Truth? It's about a cause. It's the suffering and its cause. So about the identifying where is it coming from. And then the third one is the good news. There's a possibility for being free from that issue, from that problem. And then the number 4, well, how to get there, how to reach that point. And this framework I find so useful for so many different themes and topics. Whatever you want to analyze, you can often apply that fourfold scheme. And today I would like to invite you to do the same with regards to any issues you might first want to identify and then see whether we can use the same framework to come to a good solution. Speaking of issues, okay, maybe we'll get started by, I think many of us have become inspired by the Buddha's teachings. We've heard the Dhamma at some point in our life, and including also its very lofty goal, the goal for liberation, Nirvana. However, I think only very few of us probably have an established and a very constant, regular Dhamma study and meditation routine. Just taking a wild guess, most people do not have a regular Dhamma practice, daily or reading the suttas, daily meditation. I'm not asking how many of you. I'm not asking, don't worry. But I know from experience, and I've been to places, so yeah, it's not so easy. So even though we have been inspired by the Buddha's teachings, it's not so easy to establish and commit ourselves on a daily basis towards those principles. And for most people, yeah, sometimes we go in a workshop, in a retreat, on a Buddhist event, or listen to a Dhamma talk, such as this one, and we might be inspired. But then, well, life continues, and a few days later, we move on. And then maybe 2 months later, another great event comes, maybe Katina or something else. And again, we show up and we give all our support and we're enthusiastic. And then half a year goes by with nothing, right? So you have these bursts of increased energy, but then also it fades into nothingness. But that's not the kind of nothingness that we want. It's not the kind of sunyata that the Buddha was teaching about. So this is a very common issue, that we are motivated on a retreat, on a workshop, but then it's difficult to maintain that. And so the question is, I would say, yeah, that's an issue that we face in our Dhamma practice, isn't it? Because it's not a very efficient, it's not a very effective way of making progress in any endeavor, is it? For example, you want to learn, say, a music instrument. How many of you can play some music instrument? You don't need to be a professional. I'm not asking you to do any performance. But can you raise your hand if you can play maybe piano a little bit or the guitar? Yeah, okay. Quite a few. So if you want to learn a music instrument, just imagine somebody wants to become a musician, and then he practices for 2 days very intensively, and then he puts it aside for 2 months. Well, how far will you get in this way? Yeah. Or you want to get good in sports. Maybe you want to do some running or swimming. Then you swim for a week, but then you stop for half a year. Or want to learn a language. I mean, there's no discipline where you do it on and off and have long gaps in between where you will get ever very good at. And it's the same with Dhamma, with spiritual practice. But somehow, for some reason, we Buddhists tend to think, no, in Dhamma it's okay. I show up for Vesak, for Katina, and then some of the events are organized by GLAD, but it's still the same, you know, you come and go, touch and go. Come, practice a bit, move on. Say again? Poster shot. Yeah, exactly, poster shot. So then, now we have identified the problem, lack of consistency. Okay, so that's the suffering. That's the first noble truth. What's the cause for that? There can be many causes. I don't know for you, many Dhamma practitioners, also we start out just by having a natural interest. We want to practice. Something interests us in the Dhamma, in the Buddhist teachings, and we see the value. And, well, we read a little bit, maybe watch some YouTube videos nowadays, visit a Dhamma talk. So it's a little bit like an autodidact is learning something. Autodidact doesn't have a system, doesn't have a way of practice. It's doing a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and it is accumulating a little bit of everything, but also nothing really deeply. And if you look again, you can compare with sports, with music, your art. Yes, as an autodidact, you can get to some degree somewhere. So at the beginning, you will learn things quickly. But then, you know, any professional musician, artist, they all had their tutors. They all, at some point, started to take proper music lessons, where they dedicate themselves to proper training under an experienced teacher, and where they have a supporting network that helps them to stay connected with the practice. So very rarely you will find somebody who's just an autodidact and becomes a world professional expert in anything, whether it's music, art, meditation, Dhamma practice, whatever it is. And one of the difficulties, if you do these things completely on your own, is that you, at some point, normally you run out of inspiration, isn't it? Yeah, you're inspired for a few days, but then how do you maintain that spike, that spark of inspiration in your heart every day? So it's not easy. There's a saying, inspiration is just for amateurs. Amateurs, they need to be inspired to practice. Professionals, they don't need to be inspired. As a professional, also, you're not every day so hyped, yeah, I can go out running again. Yeah, it's raining, great. No. A professional runner or somebody who wants to run a marathon, well, it's sunshine or rain. If it's training day, he's going out. And in this way, he develops a consistency in his practice. But then, again, in Dhamma practice, the same would be the case. Like Ajahn Chah used to say, when you like to meditate, meditate. But if you don't like to meditate, meditate. So it makes no difference whether you want to meditate or not. You've seen the value, you understand the value, and then it doesn't matter anymore whether right now I feel like it or not. I'm not checking in with myself. Is it just the right time, the right day? Am I inspired? If you make all these external factors, make it contingent on all these external factors, yeah, you will often find yourself not practicing. Say, professionals in any field, they just practice. They have their routine every day, from this time to that time, he's going to do his job. And this is how perfection comes about. I mean, we don't aim at perfection, maybe, but we have also lofty goals. And if you take the ultimate goal of liberation, well, yeah, that is perfection. Nirvana, the Buddha's goal, this is like winning the gold medal, the Olympic gold medal in spirituality. This is like becoming an arahant. So that's a high and lofty goal, no kidding. So, what are other problems, other difficulties that we face? What are the causes that we face why we cannot have a consistent practice? Another cause could be that we're lacking role models, isn't it? So if I'm alone in my living room, well, it's just me with myself, or maybe yourself with your wife, with your children. So I don't know whether your wife is a role model for liberation. If yes, congratulations. And also for yourself. So again, role models are very important. Whereas if you try to do it just on your own, yeah, you don't have that access. So sometimes you can watch a YouTube video, okay, well, that is inspiring. But it's not the same as being in the company of our Kalyanamitras, of somebody of whom you think, oh, that person is quite a bit further on the path than myself. Now that's also important. Again, you don't find it alone at home in your living room. A lack of a community, lack of a support system. A support network can mean something physical, like a library, a place where you can just pull out if you want to know some resources or look something up. Well, I think most of us, we probably don't have a bookshelf full of all the suttas even. So every Christian has the Bible at home. Every Muslim has the Quran. How many of you have the Tipitaka at home? Yeah, almost nobody. Sutta Central, yeah. At least you know where to find it. That's quite good already. Yeah. Well then, how much of that have you read? Yeah. So you see, it's not so easy. Of course, I have to say to our defense also, I mean, the Bible is one book. The Quran is one book. The Tipitaka is 45 books. So, okay, you can use that as to your defense, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, but these are all causes why it's so difficult. Yeah, we need the support system. We need the library sometimes. We need Kalyanamitras. We need physical places that are calm. And if you want to meditate, it's helpful if you have an environment where you're not disturbed constantly, where not constantly somebody is running in and out of the room. So many conditions. So then, these are the causes we can identify. So then the third noble truth, freedom from the issue of freedom from suffering. How would that look like? How would it look like in a best case scenario? Imagine being part of a community that consists of beginners, intermediate practitioners, and advanced practitioners, as well as, practitioners who you find very inspiring, who will function as role models. And then imagine also having regular meetings within the community where you can share each other's experiences, where we support each other, where you feel inspired, uplifted, and every time when you leave the place, you feel warm in your heart and you have a yearning for more. And imagine that there are facilities such as a well-established library, maybe a meditation room that you can use. And just imagine also there are close bonds among the community members so that they support each other whenever any one of them has any difficulties. It can be difficulties in the practice, in the meditation. It can be difficulties in private life. It can be some form of emotional distress that a community member goes through, and then the others will try to support him at each end of our own way when somebody undergoes a sense of hardship. Just imagine being part of such a kind of community. And the sense of safety that this would give you, that being part of such a group, and the joy that comes from having a daily Dhamma practice, a daily Dhamma practice routine, and the progress that actually you could make, and the steps that you could make forward towards reaching the ultimate goal of attaining Nirvana. Would you like that? Well, if yes, we come to the fourth noble truth. How to get there, right? That was now the vision. That was the third noble truth, the Nibbana, the ideal community. So then the question is, how to get there? What's the path? Well, I give you only one word. Kalyanamitras. That was the answer that we've heard earlier already, spiritual friendship. That's the one factor that the Buddha has pointed out is crucial. This is Sutta Samyutta Nikaya 45.63. Bhikkhus, one thing is very helpful for the arising of the Noble Eightfold Path. What one thing? Good friendship. When a bhikkhu has a good friend, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. So a good friend is not just a buddy with whom you go drinking, or so a good friend is somebody who introduces us to the Dhamma, who encourages us in the wholesome. Yeah? That kind of friendship. And then, of course, the famous quotation that we've heard earlier, where The Buddha admonishes Venerable Ananda, who says, Kalyanamitras, good friendship, is only half of the holy life. And then the Buddha says, no, it's not just half. It's everything. It's the totality of the holy life. Without good friendship, there is no holy life, no spiritual path. So again, we can see the emphasis that the Buddha puts on good friendship, spiritual friendship. And then the question will arise, how do Kalyanamitras help one to develop the Noble Eightfold Path? How do they do that? Well, one way can be by providing inspiration, by sharing the Dhamma, the words of the Buddha, and making it also applicable and finding examples how to apply it in our daily lives. This is one way. And we said earlier also, they serve as role models, where it's not often a form of teaching. When you're together with a person who is very highly practitioned and very well versed in the suttas and also has accomplished a sense of stability in his own practice, it's often not the things that the person says. It's by being with such a person and you see the person in different situations, especially when something does not go perfectly, when there's some issue coming up, something doesn't work as planned, or some rush is happening, something falls, something doesn't work out. And then you see somebody who is well practiced and you see the difference to somebody who has not practiced at all. The sense of stability, calmness, serenity, being able to accept things that happen, and also having the clarity of mind of making a skillful decision, being able to navigate those waters, rather than getting completely overwhelmed by emotions of fear or anger or greed or whatever it is. So it's often by working and doing things together with our Kalyanamitras where you might learn the most. So yeah, for sometimes you can also learn by the teachings, but sometimes also just by being in the presence. And these are all things you don't get on YouTube. Yeah, you can watch a video, somebody can give a Dhamma sharing, but that one-to-one interaction, it's unreplaceable. And this is the reason why many monks, why we ordain, why we live in monasteries, and why we sometimes live just one-on-one, one teacher with one disciple. You can imagine if you stay with a very well-practiced teacher and then spend a year together, how much you could learn in this short period, or half a year. Of course, you won't always have that opportunity, but then having a Buddhist center can to some degree, of course, fulfill very similar functions, where you have Kalyanamitras and where you can nourish each other and make a pit stop and recharge your batteries. Other functions of a Kalyanamitra. Kalyanamitra can also point us to useful things to read, to study. Because if you don't have any guidance, well, then I take out of the bookshelf whatever is flashy, the one with the most colorful cover, and with the most catchy title. Whereas the books that could be truly useful for me might be something completely different. So a good Kalyanamitra might be able to point me, I think you should read this book now, or another one, and maybe prevent me a little bit from the section that is not so relevant. I think most of us, we like reading biographies and stories, but then how much Dhamma do you really find there? Yes, you get some inspiration, but then when you really look into it, how much actual teachings of the Buddha are there in all these biographies? Actually, it's often surprisingly little. So it's interesting, you see a little bit from the lifestyle of some eminent monks and nuns, but then in terms of Dhamma content, it's actually not so much. So again, a Kalyanamitra can point us. Yeah, sometimes we need inspiration. Yeah, please read that. Or read the Theravada or Derivada. And then other times you need some more doctrinal understanding, some clarity of the Buddha's teachings. Point us to something else. Other function can also be to introduce us to meditation, to provide us with meditation material, either by oneself doing some guided meditation, guiding one's disciples, or by pointing to recordings on YouTube, MP3, to guided meditations that we can follow or maybe even practice together. So again, the role of a Kalyanamitra, of a good spiritual friend, is that he also thinks a little bit about the structure that helps us to practice accordingly. And also to initiate from time to time discussions, Dhamma discussions, where we come together and let's elaborate together on a topic and see what everyone can contribute. So again, being proactive and then coming up with some interesting ideas of how to make the Dhamma more tangible. And all of those things, or many of those things, not easy to do online. Yeah, sure, you can have a discussion also on Zoom, but is it the same? No, not really. You don't see their face, and somebody says something really stupid, you cannot interrupt him even because you're muted. It's not the same. So, a lot of important things are missing in a Zoom conversation. So, yeah, having one-on-one encounters, and then you see the facial expressions much clearer of your conversation partner. So these are all things that we can have at the Buddhist community, at the Buddhist center, at our home, so to speak. Also, the role of a Kalyanamitra is to create tools or programs for establishing a harmonious community, some activities that foster harmony or some shared experience. It can be an outing where you go on a trip together, or maybe even a Buddhist pilgrimage, something like that. Or could also be something more casual, conventional. It does not always have to be some hardcore, only Dhamma-related thing. Maybe go to a botanic garden, or something like that. Or some shared experience within the Buddhist community that fosters harmony, belonging, you know each other. So nice. So many of those principles, we do the same in our Sangha. So any good spiritual guide, leader, should think about those things. And I know that many of you also consider yourselves spiritual leaders, guides. On the one side, yes, you would like to have Kalyanamitras who help you along, but also there are situations where you might be the Kalyanamitra for someone else. But that's also important. Where it's your role to assist or establish someone in a useful routine. But having said that, Dhamma practice routine, Dhamma study routine, yeah, maybe now I do ask you, how many of you are meditating more than 3 times a week? More than 3 times a week? Raise your hand. Oh yeah, me too. Yeah. More than 5 times a week. At least once a day. Or really less. At least 3 times a day. Oh yeah. Yeah, not many left. So having a regular Dhamma practice, actually for your group not so bad. I can see quite many. This is already way above average, I have to say. I'm quite happy with this group here. But I still noticed also that many people do not have a daily meditation practice yet. How many of us have a daily sutta reading practice? Raise your hand. 2, including myself. 3. Sadhu. So you see, but then how many of us see value in the Buddha's words? Raise your hand. Who has not his hands up? So you see, there's a gap between what you value and what you do. That is not a good gap to have. If you truly value something, you should also try to live up and accomplish what you value. So maybe we do other things that we consider not even more important, but for some reason we find ourselves scrolling Facebook or doing something else that actually is not in line completely with our value structure, with our own internal value system, yet we spend a lot of amount of time maybe on these activities. So as a Kalyanamitra, you can also help each other to establish a useful practical routine of either meditation practice, Dhamma practice, Dhamma studies. But then how to do that? First, by turning off the phone. There's no meditation with the phone ringing. There's no Dhamma talk with the phone ringing. Thank you. Secondly, we're holding each other accountable. You know, nowadays they have even meditation apps. I think many of you might have noticed. And some of them are pretty well set up and programmed and very interactive actually. So it's not just something you play at a Dhamma talk or a guided meditation. Yes, that's the main feature. But then many of them have secondary features. And one of the most interesting one that I find is, you see, because we all are a bit weak in consistency. And how can we motivate each other to be consistent? Is holding each other accountable. So if I just make my mind up, I'm going to meditate every day, okay, good for me. But then if you also make your mind up in the same way, but you tell someone about it, I'm going to meditate every day. Now you've said it to someone. And now that person might ask you next week, are you still meditating? Or you might check your record. So by knowing that you have shared it with somebody else and somebody might hold you accountable, the consistency level goes way up. And these meditation apps, what they're doing basically, so you can invite your friends all to join that meditation app basically, and then everybody has a username or an avatar, and then every time you meditate, it tracks your meditation hours. And then your Kalyan companions, they can check how many hours you have chipped in. And if you see, wow, amazing, 5 hours, well, I've not even meditated yet. So then it's very inspiring, it's very motivating. Oh yeah, let me also clock in a little bit. So in this way, you try to use a little bit the social encouragement, because we humans are social creatures. And then in this way, you use social media or an aspect of that to your advantage, rather than constantly being dragged in the other direction. So something like that could be quite easily to establish. And it doesn't have to be on an app. It could be something where you have an internal forum or a newsletter or email setup or some easy technical way where everybody has a username and you log in and you key in, okay, today, half an hour, succeeded with my daily Dhamma reading, an hour of meditation. Tomorrow you do the same. And then people will see, the other guardians will look, wow, amazing. So in this way, you get a bit also the feedback from others and a little bit the push in the right direction. So Kalyanamitra assists and supports and encourages others to practice, to study the Dhamma. So then these were more the conventional definitions of a Kalyanamitra. There's also an interesting sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya I would like to share with you that speaks of 7 qualities of a Kalyanamitra. Anguttara 7.37. Bhikkhus, one should associate with a bhikkhu friend who possesses 7 qualities. One should resort to him and attend on him even if he dismisses you. So even if he says, no, actually I want to be by myself, please go somewhere else, you should still try to be close to that person. A bit selfish, huh? What are the 7 qualities that this person has where you should be even a bit approaching him and not taking no for a no necessarily? First one, he's pleasing and agreeable. He, she, you can substitute it. So the person is of a good, kind nature, is pleasing and agreeable. Because the person who is of pleasing character, you might want to spend time with him. If a person is very rough or rude, maybe you can tolerate it for a while, but then on the long run it's not so fun. Secondly, he's respected. And thirdly, also he's esteemed. So also other spiritual friends, they respect and esteem that person. That cannot be an additional sign that this is that he knows something, that he's wise maybe, and has good conduct. Otherwise, all the others would not respect him and regard him so highly, most likely. He's a speaker. He's a speaker in this context does not mean that he's necessarily giving Dhamma talks. He's a speaker means he's willing to admonish. He speaks to you when you're doing something wrong. So he provides feedback at the right time, given with the intention to help, out of loving kindness. So in that sense, he's a speaker. Yeah. So a good friend is not just somebody who says, wow, you're the best, you're the greatest, you've done it so well, wow, amazing. No, a good friend is something, yes, who congratulates you and confirms when you've done something right, but also when you've failed and not done something right and you're just lazy, or you didn't put in the effort, it looks quite okay, but actually you didn't put in much effort to accomplish that. That is also not so praiseworthy. And sometimes you might even have to point out something. So a good Kalyanamitra is not shy, not afraid also of approaching an uncomfortable topic, if it has to be, and at the right time, motivated by loving kindness. He patiently endures being spoken to. So when you say something to him, maybe it's also not perfect. You don't have to be an arahant to be Kalyanamitra to someone else. So when you might say something about him, towards him, that you don't appreciate, then he's easy to speak to. He accepts it, or he maybe even appreciates it. It's like somebody pointing out a treasure. You know, everybody has his blind spots. And then, yeah, you never know. You can see the mistakes of everyone else, but our own mistakes are sometimes hard to see. So then somebody pointing out a mistake that I haven't seen for a long time, somebody like pointing out a treasure. Look here, it's obvious, look at this. Oh yeah, wow. So in this way we should actually appreciate if somebody takes the trouble and tells us something. Say, oh, okay, thank you very much. So a true Kalyanamitra is also doing that and also receiving the feedback gracefully. He gives deep talks on the Dhamma, on wisdom, on loving kindness, mindfulness, so he can speak on the Dhamma. He does not enjoin one to do what is wrong. Okay? So he will not motivate you in doing something unwholesome or something crooked. So he will always try to find ways of encouraging you to do something wholesome, bring you to Dhamma activities, rather than offer you a lot of distractions or encourage you to waste your money or do something or hurt your relationships and things like that. You know, so 7 qualities. What were they? Remember? No. I remember Bhante Ayasma doing his Dhamma talks usually. You know, he comes with this list, long list, sometimes 11 things and 15. And then at the end of the Dhamma talk, okay, what was the first, second? And then, of course, people don't know. I mean, he can come up with 3 or 4. And then he always scratches his head and says, how come? I just told you. I just told you these 15 factors. How come you don't know? You know, actually, Bhante Ayasma, he learns very easily. He remembers things himself very quickly. I noticed it many times. And you tell him something, he can really remember things so quickly, so easily. So he's truly amazed that somebody cannot remember. It is really puzzling to him that somebody cannot remember 15 things just like that. So one day we need more time for that. I will go over it afterwards. So okay, let's do it together. So the first one, what was the first quality of a Kalyanamitra? He's pleasing and agreeable. Second one, respected, esteemed. Number 4, he's a speaker. A loudspeaker? What kind of speaker? He admonishes others. Yeah. Yes, right. He provides feedback. Next one. Well, you're looking at your paper. He's honest. Yeah. He patiently endures being spoken to. Okay? What else? Deep topics, deep talks, has deep views, and he's able to share well and understandably. He does not enjoin one, this is the last one, to do what is wrong. So he holds you back if you want to go in the unwholesome direction. Exactly. There's another sutta with another 5, 6, 7 qualities. I'm sure you will remember them very easily, right? First one, he gives what is hard to give. So he's sharing resources. Secondly, he does what is hard to do. You know, sometimes helping others, it's not so easy also. It can also be uncomfortable for yourself, either giving resources or giving time. So it's not always fun to be there for others. Sometimes people compare it, like helping others is a little bit like waking up in the middle of the night and having to go to the toilet. You don't really want to go, but you feel so much better once you have, right? Helping others is also like that. You know, at first you're a bit hesitant, but then afterwards, having done it, having spent the time, having given resources, time, attention, you feel quite good. You feel very happy that you have done it. that you were able to be of support to somebody else. Yeah, like having gone to the toilet. At the end, you're so happy. Okay, it feels quite good right now. He reveals his secrets to you. Yeah, so it's not secretive, or it's not. He's open. Yeah, so even something a bit unpleasant or some not so beautiful side of him, he's making it open. He's not trying to conceal it. But also, he preserves your secrets. So yeah, when you open something up, he's not posting it on Facebook. So he preserves it for himself. He's not telling them around. He does not forsake you when you are in trouble. So he supports you even in difficulties. And he does not roughly despise you. So what does that mean? For example, when you're in financial troubles or when you're down and out, he doesn't laud himself or disparages you. Yeah. So wouldn't it be wonderful to be surrounded by Kalyanamitras like this? Good luck. Good luck meaning don't look for it just outside. If you want to be surrounded by people like that, well, the easiest way to have that is to become a person like that yourself. And if all of us here aspire to become Kalyanamitras like that, then we are all surrounded by Kalyanamitras exactly like this. Right? That's the easiest way. Rather than you don't have to travel to Thailand and find that one Kalyanamitra in one monastery. Then if you're a woman, it's even more problematic because, yeah, what are you doing with this one monk then? So no, yeah, you can do it among yourselves. You can offer that guidance, the inspiration, all these beautiful qualities. There's nothing that is outside of your boundaries. Yeah. So I very much wish that this place will be a home base, as you call it, right? Or a home base, home for many Kalyanamitas to come, so that it does become a location where, as we said earlier, you're part of a community that consists of beginners, intermediate levels, and advanced practitioners, who function as a role model. But then also where you will have regular meetings, where at the end of every meeting, hopefully, you feel inspired, uplifted, and yearning for more. Where facilities are available, you have a library, a place to meditate, a soft couch is comfortable. Where over time they develop close friendships and bonds among the community members, so that we can support each other. Not just in times when everything is going right, but also in times of distress, hardships. But you can imagine of a group of 15, 20, 30, 50 people, there's always somebody who has some hardships. It reminds me of SBS, 10, 15 monks always. And then, yeah, sure, some issue a person has, something comes up in his practice, then you help him along and finally he overcomes it, everything okay. But sure enough, tomorrow somebody else will have something. And then, yeah, you work with him, okay, he overcomes it after a while. There's always somebody, once you have a family or a larger group of people, there's always somebody in some kind of distress. I'm still waiting for the day when nobody has any problems, where I can just go back to my kuti and nothing to do. So there's always somebody who needs some troubleshooting. But it's also a wonderful opportunity. There's always an opportunity to help, to be of service, to support. And as I said earlier, actually, it feels good. Our own lives become meaningful through the help that we can do for others, isn't it? And most satisfaction that people say at the end of their lives, when you ask them on their deathbed, what are you the most proud of? It's rarely that somebody says, my bank account. It's always something, well, I was helping that person when he was in trouble, or I've sacrificed so much. Really. These are the statements that you will hear again and again. So it's actually not the things that you have gained, but the things that you have given that make you really proud at the end of the day. So that is exactly what Kalyanamitras, a Buddhist community, a Sangha, an extended Sangha that you're having here, that's what it's all about. Supporting each other and growing together. And lastly, well, that I wish that this also becomes a place where you can experience the joy that comes from having a regular Dhamma practice, where study, meditation is being done together, not only together, maybe also individually, where we encourage each other, hold each other accountable, and progress towards the goal of the Dhamma, the goal of the Buddha's teachings, liberation, Nirvana. Keep it at that. So, on that note, I would like to invite, just in case there are any questions or comments.
Is anyone with any questions we can
Answer or ask? So I was the one who was supposed to ask the questions. Okay, okay. Let me ask one question actually. How many of you that you have encountered at some point in your life somebody whom you would call a Kalyanamitra, somebody who has taken you aside and helped you on the Dhamma path, what you would say actually quite significantly, where you felt without that person on the side, you don't know how a certain situation would have gone or whether you would still have found the Dhamma or not. How many of you have encountered a person like that in your life? Wow, so many. Okay, amazing. Yeah, actually it's very rare, you know. It's not many people usually raise their hand when I ask this kind of question. So it also shows that a lot of good work has been done already here. And of course, it's not a new topic to you. I assume nobody here heard the word Kalyanamitra today for the first time. And it's a good sign that so many of you have encountered it already. And most likely you have also been Kalyanamitras at one point or another to another person. Yeah.
So how do we sustain this kind of community practice when actually we sometimes also find it hard to nourish each other in the process?
Well, you need to establish regular meetings. It's the same that the Buddha advised for the Sangha. There will be no Sangha if the monks are not coming together in harmony, discussing the Dhamma in harmony and separating in harmony. So having regular encounters, meetings, activities, that's the most important thing. It's almost more important than the content of the meeting itself. Getting people to spend time together, looking at each other's face, or avatar, no. Zoom is not a substitute. You can see exactly the generations, you know, that kind of joke. The first row understood it, the third row, avatar, what is he talking about? So yeah, meeting regularly, having Dhamma activities, but also you have to be careful because not every Dhamma activity will arouse interest. If the Dhamma activity is just, okay, let's try to find out for the hundredth of time what are the 10 parames and what are the Four Noble Truths. Well, yeah, people have heard that before, or just another Dhamma talk. So you need to do something more special because there's many of those things are already out there. And there's the whole world, the YouTube is full with Dhamma talks. So if you just generate another one of this along the same lines, why would people come to a center, drive half around the city, stand in a traffic jam, just to hear the same thing as I could do back in my room, sitting in my underpants, and not me, but why would I take the trouble, right? So, yeah. So you're competing not with other centers. Often people think, oh, we Buddhists, we compete with other faiths, with Christianity or with Islam. No, you're not. You're really not competing with them. You're competing with an algorithm. You're competing with YouTube, with Facebook. These are your competitors. Because even if somebody finds you or your Dhamma talk on those platforms, well, next to your Dhamma talk, there's a whole list of other topics that the algorithm will suggest that are maybe much more interesting, much more catchy, all kind of conspiracies. So yeah, then you come with your 10 parames. Good luck. So yeah, we have to have programs that are interactive, that keep people engaged, and are personal in nature. It's maybe not so much even about the content. Sure, the content matters, but also the personal encounters, getting people active in the meetings. I think that's much more important, because that's what they don't have online. The other things you can do online quite easily. I mean, it's good, we have that access. And there's nothing wrong with Zoom meetings, YouTube. And yeah, they can fulfill a certain function in our Dhamma learning as well. But then also, it's not enough for most of us. We need a daily encounter or the regular encounter. That at least once a week, I would say, where you meet here at the place, at your home, as you call it. A home is something where you go, not just once a year, but where you live, basically, where you spend some time. So a home is something where the doors are open, where people can come, whether they feel happy, when they feel sad, and there will be somebody hopefully around to take them up. So that's what we understand under home. So this is what you can create here.
Two questions for now. All right, let's ask the first question. My first question is a somewhat theoretical question on necessity. Bhante, you were mentioning, you were referencing the sutta about how spiritual friendship is not half of the holy life, it's everything. And I was wondering how necessary is spiritual friendship. I was talking to a friend some time ago, and we were discussing about developing youth groups and developing youth communities. And I was saying something like, well, the Buddha didn't need a youth group, so to speak. So I imagine and I presume most people need good friends and spiritual friends. Maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe there are a few individuals out there who are more independent, so to speak, and they don't really need too much of a community. They could, I guess, learn and practice on their own. And so, my theoretical question is something like, is there any sort of essential difference between the Buddha? I mean, the Buddha, he was, as a bodhisattva, he was sort of alone in his practice, right? And there wasn't really a spiritual community. Is there any sort of essential difference between the bodhisattva and us today, such that it is pretty much necessary for us to have good friendship and spiritual friendship?
Well, you can make your progress on the path faster or slower. How long did it take the Buddha to become a Buddha? Is that the time frame that you're willing to take on your own path to awakening? Because if you do it without a teacher, without a guide, yeah, if you're consistent and really dedicated, maybe after many, many lifetimes, at some point you hit the jackpot and you develop well enough that it works. But then you can do it much more quickly, in a much more dedicated fashion, if you take guidance of a previous Buddha. And the Kalyanamitras that we have nowadays are basically the spokespersons of the Buddha. So the Kalyanamitras at the ancient times, their main role was to pass on the words of the Buddha to others. We didn't have books, they didn't have YouTube. So the role of a Kalyanamitra was pretty much, a very central role was basically to share and pass on the Dhamma. So partly that aspect of a Kalyanamitra can be substituted nowadays through books, I would say. They can be partly your Kalyanamitras, not all these functions, right? You don't entrust your secrets to a book. Some of the functions of Kalyanamitras clearly are not about books and about Dhamma knowledge, but one important aspect is the passing on of Dhamma knowledge. So yes, some people can do it and walk the path without physical inspiration, Kalyanamitras. That's what I meant earlier with these autodidacts, where you can become quite good in a certain discipline, just winging it and doing it on your own. But sooner or later, for most people, when you want to become really good in something, you will look for a mentor, you will look for a teacher, a trainer, and you can progress usually much faster, because that person knows not only what works, he also knows what does not work. And then he can prevent you, he can already see, oh, okay, you're going down this road, I've done that, I know how that ends. So he can save you a lot of time. So can it be done alone? Yes, it can be done, but I think it's for most people a much slower and much more difficult and much more suffering way of doing it, rather than getting the support from Kalyanamitras. Yeah.
So, mentioning one of the very good function and role of Kalyanamitas is recommending resources, right? So you say sometimes we might need inspiration, we go to the Bible, people inspiring practitioners, sometimes we need more kind of understanding. And I think that's very, very relevant to some of us. In my role in developing youth communities, sometimes there are a lot of diverse challenges and diverse situations that different youths face. Like they might need different things in different sort of points of their life. And also their interests might be quite different. They might be interested in certain types of content or certain types of spiritual help or spiritual support. And so I guess my more practical question is, what would you recommend or what would you suggest to leaders to consider, to think about and to do in terms of supporting this diversity of needs and interests and challenges?
I think more and more come to the understanding that my role or our role as leaders and guides is not so much to tell them what is the best thing for them. It's more of letting them think and figure out on their own. And more often than not, you find yourself asking interesting questions for them to answer on their own. And for example, while somebody is struggling with something or is not motivated, you can ask that person, rather than telling him what to do, what to read. In the past, when you felt like this, what did you do? What helped you at that time to overcome that? What resources did you do? Did you evoke at that time? So you let him find the answer himself, because very often, as you say, what works for one person might not work for another. So, but sometimes people, they don't think actively about how to get out of it. They just hope that things will change magically. So you can just point them a little bit in this direction and ask them, what do you think, what could help? And then what are the things that you are currently maybe doing that if you stop them or reduce them might help you? What are the things that block you from progressing or that block you from... So what to do to enhance warmth in the community, a feeling of being welcome, rather than people coming in and nobody cares for them and they have to find a seat on their own and don't know if I'm in the right building or not. So yeah, so if you have heard that kind of feedback repeatedly, and that comes up often, because you asked also, is it true? I would assume it is true, because otherwise you wouldn't hear from that from time to time. So probably it is a real thing that is happening. And maybe there could be other religious communities that are maybe better in being welcoming or having some fun activities. So yeah, that could be a correct observation. Whether you would like to change something about that, this is then a second question, because the goal of a Buddhist community, a Buddhist society, it's not that our highest goal, I presume, to just have the most fun events. I mean, then we can just go to the, I don't know, amusement park, and then we keep the Dhamma books away and we just enjoy ourselves. And I mean, if you just want to maximize fun and entertainment, that clearly is also not our main goal. So I think it's about striking a lucky balance between how entertaining and welcoming something has to be, but also while maintaining still also the decency, the respect, the form, the style of a serious Dhamma practice. And I guess the taste can be quite different, because different teachers, different communities, they will feel different depending on the members of the community. So if you have a community where there's a lot of younger people who are just a bit more active in their temperament, yeah, you will probably have a bit more fun encounters. Whereas if the community is more seasoned, you might have a lot of wisdom there, but then probably less fun parts. Not necessarily, actually. I actually find often in elderly communities also a lot of joy and fun. It can be the opposite as well. Often young people also can be quite stiff. So it very much depends. So yeah, but yeah, the observation is probably correct, and then it really depends. So if you get this feedback in a certain community or in your own, that people feeling not welcome, and then yeah, this is something to take seriously, and then to try and find ways of having activities maybe that create a more bonding experience. Maybe rather than just sitting together over the Dhamma books, you offer everyone a cup of chocolate. Yeah, you're laughing, but You know, they did some research where they asked, there's an interviewer, a researcher, and the other person filling out the questionnaire. She's asking him questions about empathy and connection. And then they experimented by giving one person a cup to hold, a cup of hot coffee or hot chocolate, forgot. And then, so you're having the conversation, and at the end of the conversation, they fill out a questionnaire where they evaluate the other person with whom they just had the conversation. And they would describe him, you know, as welcoming, warm, kind, and so on. And then they have other groups where they also, same person having conversations, and then they get a cold drink to hold, a cold cup, iced coffee, something like that. But it's still a good drink, you know, nothing bad. But interestingly, they experience their conversation partner as cool, not so warm, not so friendly. Everything else is the same person. It's just the one is holding the hot cup. I think that's why I have 2 cups here. So when they want to cool me down a little bit, they give me this one. And then it's getting too boring, and they say, "Bhante, touch the other one." So yeah, I mean, there's so many things happening subconsciously, of course, and they don't know that. So these are things that how you can introduce kindness, warmth, connection, just by offering people a drink or some snacks. It's just one idea. I'm sure our Dhamma leaders have much more experience. In the corporate world, all these things are well known, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So making activities that are more entertaining, where you don't just sit around, where you do something together. There are Dhamma games. In SBS, we had youth programs where children are playing. I'm sure you're doing something similar. But then games are not only for children. Even adults like to play. Adults like stories, storytelling. All those things can be quite fun. This is actually where adults are often much better, because you have so much experience, life experience, you have stories from your whole life that you've been telling already 5 times, 10 times over. Your relatives, they can't hear them anymore anyway. But then when you come to the Dhamma circles, you come up with your old stories, so it can be quite fun. So you bring to the table whatever you have, and then see how others respond. Yeah, but taking the feedback seriously, I think, is important, yeah. Well, of course, taking refuge in the Dhamma, in the Buddha's teachings, that's the thing that really nourishes us. That's the thing that we need. But where is it coming from? It's not just falling from the sky. You need somebody to introduce you to the Dhamma. And often we need also a person who inspires us, where we don't only hear the Dhamma. For some people that might be almost enough just to hear the Dhamma. But many people also need to see, oh, it can be done. There's somebody who seems to be much more advanced than myself. It can be done. It's like a living example. And that role you don't often get just from the books. Sure, some people, maybe myself included, I can just read the suttas and get so much inspiration by hearing the stories of Sariputta, Mahamoggallana. But this is not open to everyone to the same degree, and I have to admit that. So often we do need also these living Kalyanamitras to inspire us. And I think there are good reasons for that. So we shouldn't neglect the role of living role models and in their function of guiding us and also pointing us in a direction where sometimes we might go astray. Even though we think we take the suttas as our guide, but then you can still interpret some suttas in one way or another. So having a Kalyanamitra will help you to double check also your own perspectives, your views, your understanding, or question you about it. How do you understand right effort? How do you understand right mindfulness? There's quite a variety of opinions about those topics. Samma Samadhi, you can have just such a simple term, but then 5,000 definitions. So again, having a Kalyanamitra, he can also correct for some of the misunderstandings. And that's not so easy just by looking at the book. So yeah, ultimately the Dhamma is the one that makes us self-reliant, and especially with stream entry, once you become a Sotapanna, you less and less rely and need the external help from other people or not even from the books. The Sotapanna has internalized the Dhamma to such a degree that he will move forward. It's like a stream, the current of the stream leading and pushing the person towards the goal, towards liberation. But before that, you do need the support left and right to stay in the stream, or even to find the stream to begin with. So depends also where you are in your path of practice. But yeah, in the end, make an island to yourself, be a refuge to yourself. Don't take refuge in gurus. Present-day teachers are not a substitute for the Buddha. Then we only have 3 refuges. There's no 4th refuge. There are some traditions where they speak of a 4th refuge, the guru. So in India and some of the Tibetan traditions, they take refuge formally in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the Guru, the living teacher. Nothing of that is found in the suttas. So yeah. So in this way, you can progress by the support of both, the Dhamma, but also the Kalyanamitras. I think they are not separative, they're mutually compatible, I would say. And ideally, you make best use of both. Okay? So number 1, first question, will it come? Will it become accessible? No doubt. Very clearly, and I've already seen versions of that. So people have already started on that project. And it's actually, you can even do it yourself very easily, which what is called prompting. So you can just start your conversation with ChatGPT and tell him, you are the Buddha, you address me as a devotee, and don't break character, and use the language of the discourses when you reply, the style and the format of the discourses, and you would be amazed what is coming out there. So it's just getting the information, and you can ask him Dhamma questions, and to be honest, the answers are equally good or better than the average Buddhist that you would find in any Buddhist society. So I wouldn't want to make a test here, competition with ChatGPT. Yes, occasionally there are mistakes or misunderstandings, but this also happens for humans. And then it's just a matter of time where it's just getting better and better. So when it comes to getting technical answers to doctrinal questions, define right effort, what are the 10 7 awakening practice, what are the 10 parames. I mean, this is children's play, but you can get much more detailed answers also. How to deal with restlessness. You get really nice answers for that. Or how to overcome sloth and torpor in meditation, things like that. So that role can be easily covered at some point, which is owned by ChatGPT or something equivalent. However, if you remember the functions of a Kalyanamitra that we had earlier in the sutta, let us double check how many of them can artificial language model fulfill. First one, he is pleasing and agreeable. Okay, it's actually quite friendly. Normally it's not cursing, probably better than most Buddhists. So, okay, this one, ChatGPT wins maybe. He's respected and esteemed. Well, maybe neutral, maybe not respected, but it's okay. He's a speaker, meaning he admonishes you. No, it does not admonish you for anything. So it does not see your blind spots. It does not point you in any direction. It just gives you answers for whatever you ask it. So this is a very important function of a true living person, of a Kalyanamitra who points you and who can see your blind spots. That I doubt that will ever come, or maybe sometime when we have robots living with us, and then maybe then they can see your blind spots at some point. But yeah, that one currently certainly not the case. He patiently endures being spoken to. Yeah, they're quite patient with that. Yeah. So I'm sure you can curse it and you can use all kind of things and they will be okay. He gives deep talks, maybe. Does not enjoin one to what is wrong. That I also wouldn't be so sure, because depending on what are the objectives behind it, then this one depends then probably on the one who programs it and other things. Other factors, he gives what is hard to give. No. A language model will not support you when you're broke. Maybe you can get some counseling, yeah, like a suicide hotline. Yeah. It does what is hard to do, patiently endures what is hard to endure, reveals his secrets to you. I don't know, but I wouldn't even want to know. He preserves your secrets probably quite well. Does not forsake you when you are in trouble. Yeah, you can see there are some areas where the human connection is needed, where a language model, I think, does not fulfill the role. When it just comes to the cold transmission of Dhamma, transmission of information, I think they're already almost on equal level with us, and it's just a matter of weeks or months where they are surpassing the average Dhamma practitioner, Buddhist knowledge. Even knowledge, they're trained on the whole internet. So whom can you find who knows about all the Buddhist traditions? Even if you ask me now all the details about certain Mahayana schools of Buddhism, I can't give you any answers there. But you can get it from ChatGPT within a split second. So even I can't compete there. So yeah. So again, some functions can be fulfilled. Like earlier your question with the books or with the Dhamma, but others cannot. So I don't think human connection, human meetings, places like this where you come together as a group, they won't be substitutable. It's quite safe. So in that sense, your companionship will still be needed for a long time. Okay? Yeah, and even if it gives you the answers, it will never be inspiring. You will never be inspired by a computer. Wow, he made it. he can focus without being distracted. Amazing. So he became a stream handler. What does that even mean? You can just turn him off. He becomes a non-returner as soon as you turn him off. So actually, you never will feel inspired by any of those things. And actually, it's an interesting point where even with the Buddha, where the later generations of Buddhists, after the Buddha's passing away, you can see how the Buddha also, he was given some extra qualities, where the Buddha became much more supernatural after his passing away, which is most likely also due, you see, when the Buddha was still around, he was inspiring everyone through his presence, through his charisma. He didn't have to have psychic powers where he can know everything, omniscience, these kind of things were not necessary. But then, as the Buddha passed away, other sects in India, they had their teachers, their traditions. So the longer the Buddha was not around anymore to inspire people through his presence, it's quite understandable how the faithful devotees were also competing a little bit with other schools that came up, might have had an incentive to add some extra features and spices to the Buddha's qualities, which was not necessary at the beginning through his own practice and inspiration. But then, over the years, he became almost like a supernatural, supernormal person. He becomes abnormally large. His skin never has any dirt on it, and all kinds of features that, where after a while you wonder, well, what does that have to do with me? How can I be inspired by him or by that? Because it's almost like a god or some. It's not even like a human being anymore. And in the Mahayana tradition, yeah, the Buddha, even in his last days, he was not sick. The Buddha was never sick. So in the early Buddhist text, we can see the end, old age. Yeah, he became sick, and these things have been edited away. So then it's almost too perfect. The person can become too perfect that you can still compare it with yourself. And that also then doesn't function much inspiration anymore. I can much more identify with a person who has had some struggles, some difficulties. We have these two very wonderful books, Sutta Pitaka. One is called the Theragatha, the other one is called the Therigatha. These are verses from Arahant, monks and nuns. And the reason why they are so inspiring is because you can see there all the struggles that they have had before they became awakened. And you can see that these were people just like you and me. I mean, there's one of them who said, well, for 10 years, I didn't have a moment of peace of mind. It was just a struggle, it was just pain. And eventually, well, he stuck to it and it became an arahant. So I mean, there were people who really had it difficult. Yeah, with such a person I can identify, I can relate to. But if somebody is so perfect, pure, golden skin, from beginning to the middle to the end, what does that have to do with us? Right? So in the same way with ChatGPT, yeah, it might give you the perfect answers, but it will not be inspiring. Yeah, well, very inspiring. No, right?
Thank you very much. That was such a wonderful answer. I think that's AI just lacks the kind of humanness.
Yeah.
Can never be vulnerable with you. It's just too perfect.
Yeah, yeah. It's both its strength, but also its greatest weakness. Yeah, yeah. Okay, last question. Anyone? Okay, that was the last question. So, now I would like to invite also all of us to make available all the good karma that we have accumulated through listening to the Dhamma, through preparing this wonderful place, renovating the place, all the effort that has gone into that, not just money, not just time, effort, strength, dedication, sweat, sometimes blood, and all the good wholesome merit that has been coming out of that, including, of course, our meeting today, where we reflect on the Dhamma, discuss the Dhamma, share the Dhamma, and hopefully also many more events to come. So this kind of building is not just something for today, it's an investment for the future and future generations of Dhamma discussions. So the merit that you've accumulated by making that possible is just uncountable. So we bring all of that back into our mind, and now we have a choice. Either all that merit that we've accumulated, we keep for ourselves, or we share it. What are we going to do? Keep, huh? Share? Okay. Okay, sharing of merit once again. So we share it with our departed relatives and friends and all beings, that they may happily rejoice, and by the very act of rejoicing, they make the good karma of rejoicing, and in this way they can derive benefit from our sharing. Our good karma cannot just magically jump over to another person. You're the owner of your own karma, but anybody who rejoices, including ourselves, can make merit and rejoice happily in the good karma. So again, we invite our departed relatives and friends and all beings to do that. Let's do that formally together by reciting. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang no nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang vo nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Ettavata ca amhihi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. And lastly, let us also make an aspiration so that the good karma that we have accumulated will also support us on the path to liberation towards Nibbana. Please repeat after me. Idang me punyang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Idang me punyang nibbanassa paccaya hotu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.